Hey, peace and love, family. I want to do a slightly different kind of video today. Be going over the top, I'll say about 15 things that you need as a Moorish-American to navigate out here. And before I get into anything, I want y'all to know that this list is strictly my opinion. You don't have to follow this. This is just some of the things that, I suggest. And also, I'm not going to be going in any particular order to say what's more important, so if something is higher or lower on the list, you know, I don't want people to get offended by that, and I'm not even going to number the list. I'm going to just really go over the things uh, that I want to talk about today. So, to get started, I'll say you need a nationality card. Now, I have several videos going over the nationality card, and as you know, if it's not your first video on my channel, that my office does nationality cards. All you have to do is check out one of our videos, get the email, or yeah, I give it to you now, Walter Bay, the number 7 more at gmail.com, and we can get at you about anything y'all would like, status correction, and anything on this list. If anybody wants to either the information or more clarification about the status correction for these things, or just how to get them, get at me. Um, Next up, I'm gonna go with the voter registration card, and this is one thing that I don't really hear any of the Moors talking about, except Boudreaux Ali, who told us that we need to be able to cast a free national ballot, and I definitely agree with that. If we were to get a Moorish-American into an office, someone in our particular community that understands our needs, our status, and our issues a little bit better. And it's not to say that we don't have any officials in office, because we do have some Moorish-Americans here and there, but it's not many that actually recognize themselves as Moorish-Americans in office. But that is definitely something we need to grow the nation, if we're going to do it in that sense. If we're going to retake our spots in government, we're going to need people to go into public office like that, and it's pretty much no way around it. Even if we're dealing with our own government and create our own thing, at some point we're going to have to take up enough land and jurisdiction. We're going to have to pretty much annex, so that we can accomplish all the goals that we need, and be back in power to where we used to be. So, you know, that's just one foot in the door. And if you've ordered the full package from us, we actually give you the affidavit on how to go in and correct that voter registration card properly. Um, Now, next up, I'll say, is the authenticated birth certificate. I don't want to go too far into that because I have other videos on the birth certificate, but I'll just say that it is the first instrument that misclassifies us, and it's something that needs to go back and be corrected if it's not already basically set up from your birth. If your parents didn't know what to do to operate in the contract properly, and you have a birth certificate from the state, you probably want to go back and correct that. That's just my suggestion. Now, next up, I'm gonna say an estate. Now, an estate is basically a trust and a few other components that we use to operate and navigate out here. So, if you're not operating out of your estate, out of your trust, there's someone out here managing for you. There's someone out here managing, your affairs or your paperwork in your straw appellation. And, the estate is really the only way to remanage it, along with, much other things, like having your will and things set up. Um, Next up, I'm gonna go with a passport. I currently have a world passport, but in the case that anything goes on, that the current administration or anything gets worse, and you want to get out of Dodge, that just sounds like a good idea to me. Have a passport, be able to travel through different borders, and you know, I've done things on I've done videos on the World Passport, or at least one, I'm sure, on here. I've done a few more on the other platforms as well, so I'm not gonna go too deep into it. Um, I'm gonna go on to the next, and I'll say you need credit cards or debit cards in your national appellation. If you have your nationality card, and you're traveling, you also want to have that credit card, debit card, just say to pay for your ticket, and to have as basically like an additional form of ID, showing that you paid for whatever, ticket in your national appellation, to show that, you're serious. You're not carrying around, other IDs that say anything different that people might misconstrue. Yeah. And that kind of goes into, should you even have these other instruments, which is a topic I've talked about in the past. So I'm gonna just keep going down the line, and I'm gonna say books or binders to hold your paperwork. Everyone knows Moors are known for having lots and lots of paperwork, affidavits, things of that sort. So yeah, you definitely want to be organized with that. There are many different ways of doing it. Yeah, it's just all about planning. But next up, I say get CM based copyrights. I've done a video on those. Another real deep subject I'm not gonna get into too much, but those copyrights definitely have the advantage of being a claimant to those works. And I'm also saying next, you need a personal library. Moors read books, or studious Moors read books, read multiple books. Having a personal library somewhere you can just sit back and read. A table set up where you can have a few books set up. So, when you go into a topic as deep as you should have a dictionary, an etymology dictionary, and maybe a few others, depending on what subject it is you're going into. Pretty much self-explanatory. But also, I'm gonna say a personal office, and that's more, I'd say, where you have your laptop, your printer, your mailing things like envelopes, labels, paper. You know, I say keep that separate from your library. There's books you may need in there or be able to combine it yourself. But me, I like to have things differently, yeah, and have my own personal office space. It allows me to do certain work more efficiently with not having the clutter of books around me. But that's how I operate. Now, also, I'm gonna say you want to have your Moorish Quran or your Circle 7 and all the temple literature. Anything by Noble Drew Ali, definitely good stuff. Yeah. Um, More is also you want to have your paperwork together, your notices, maybe your injunctions, name corrections, proclamations. Uh, Moors are really known for doing lots of paperwork, so I'll say that's definitely an important thing, to have on the list. You can inquire about maybe which paperwork may be best for your situation because people go at things differently. There's different ways to operate, public and private. So you need different things for different situations. So didn't want to leave that out. Another thing is EIN. A lot of Moors talk about getting your EINs, especially in the 9-8 series as a foreign EIN. Um, just another way to operate. This is more of a thing when you're operating privately in your estate and through your trust to more be an alternate for a social. You know, it's more of a business number. It's an employer identification number by definition. And I like to think of myself more of an employer than an employee. I don't currently work for anyone except for the Moors I contract with and do services for. But you know that's how I operate. I've operated in the plantation system too, or the workforce, the job force, whatever y'all want to call it. You understand? And there's ways of doing that properly in your Moorish status. You can get at me about that. That's part of our status correction package. But just to move on, your fez, your turban, or your international wear. You know, jewels, crystals, things of that sort. Moors like to take it from all different ways, but that's just how it is. And last up, I'm gonna say your briefcase. Another way of organizing paperwork and things of that sort. And I'm gonna leave it at that. That's last up on the list. Peace, fam.